The Imagism Movement by Alex Tyler. The movement was an era of poetry defined by the rejection of Victorian and Romanticism conventions, as well as being a component of modernism. It included poets from the early 20th century, which included those of English and American origin. It was a provocation of visual imagery, using simple and low, non-elevated language to make it clear. The movement preceded the fireside poets in the 19th century, and was succeeded by the objectivist movement from the 1930s. The movement of Imagism started from the ideas of T. E. Holman in 1908, from the basis that poetry should be of presentation that was both precise and without unnecessary verbosity. In 1912, Imagism was launched by Ezra Pound, with the help from Hilda Doolittle's poem being sent to the magazine Poetry, and the term Imagisme was created to describe the type of poetry. By 1913, Pound had coined the characteristics that made up Imagism, which was published in magazine Poetry. It included that it was directly addressing the subject, it was to avoid commentary using abbreviated, clear language, and it was to use musical rhythm instead of the metronome as a free verse. In 1914, an anthology was published entitled Des Imagistes, edited by Pound, which included 10 other various authors and poets. During this time as well, Amy Lowell became a prominent lead in the Imagism movement as a whole. By 1917, the Imagism movement had dissipated. During the movement, many poets and authors came to join the movement to separate themselves from the normal ways of other movements. Near the beginning of the movement, T. E. Holman was an inspiring figure in the ideas of Imagism, as with providing the movement with its early ideas. In its ensuing creation of Imagism, Ezra Pound, along with Hilda Doolittle and F. S. Flint, helped to create the basis for the movement. During the first publishing of Imagism's anthology, more poets and authors were developing and were establishing themselves into the movement. This included the latter leading figure in the movement, Amy Lowell, among others such as Ford Madox Ford, William Carlos Williams, James Joyce, Richard Aldington, John Cornus, and Alan Upward. For my poems I selected In a Station of the Metro by Ezra Pound. The apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals on a wet, black bow, and the poem of The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rain water, besides the white chickens. So in the poem In a Station of the Metro, we see the narrator observing faces of the people in the station. In the first line, although these faces aren't ordinary, they seem like ghosts and apparitions. The second and final line deals of describing petals on a wet, black main branch of a tree, something that the narrator compares with the faces, making the poem a metaphor expressing that the faces are petals on a tree. In the poem, it deals with two kinds of symbolism in its imagery, the faces of the crowd and the boa and its petals. Altogether, the poem serves as a metaphor and creates unseen external connections. There are various items that can be connected to other themes and symbols outside of the visuals in the poem, such as the description of the apparition's faces and the black bow, which suggests the transient nature of human beings. Another symbol that can be seen within the poem could be connected to the natural or divine likeness of people's appearance and its connection and disconnection with the world around us. Within these symbols, nature plays a major role in comparison with its human counterparts. As the title suggests, the setting of the poem takes place in the metro station, with the author being a quiet yet imaginary observer of their surroundings. As with the poem's formation, the lines are set in one couplet and is developed as a non-traditional haiku, with the last words in the second line serve as an alliteration. In the poem A Red Wheelbarrow, the first two lines attest to the unspecified control or reliance on the item to which is going to be revealed. The third and fourth lines transition to the unspecified significance of a red wheelbarrow, differentiating from the title disconnecting both the wheel and barrow. The fifth and sixth lines then gives readers a visual difference of the wheelbarrow in that it's covered in dull rainwater. The glazing also gives the wheelbarrow a glistening effect to it. The seventh and eighth lines, which are made up of the last couplets, give readers another visual to look upon, is that the white chickens is besides the wheelbarrow. As with Ezra Pound's poem, it contains two major symbols in that imagery is of nature and with a different symbol of farmland. However, instead of connecting items together, the poem seems to separate ideas and items with still implying connection as a whole between the two. The images used to describe the wheelbarrow lay great significance upon the item. Maybe the wheelbarrow serves as a greater responsibility to the setting than just with the chickens. The imagery of the red wheelbarrow also seems to contain an unnoticed connection between the natural beings of the world and the human creation within it, sitting side by side. The setting of the poem doesn't come from the title, but it seems to come from the imagery within it, as readers guess the wheelbarrow is located on a farm, with the imagery of white chickens next to the barrow. The narrator, likewise, seems to be someone who understands what's going on with the visual image being put forth, and is reminiscent. The structure of the poem itself splits into 4 couplets, with the poem being developed as a free verse and with the absence of capital letters.